Hello, everyone. My name is Eric. I run the Sustainable Suite Script community for NetSuite developers over at Stoic Software. And I'm here today with Salto customer engineer Jeff Rutledge. Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
How you
folks.
doing?
Hi, folks. I'm very well, thanks.
Right. So we have been doing these webinars, these events every month this year to kind of demonstrate the Salto platform, show where it fits and supports the NetSuite ecosystem. But as we wind down the year, we wanted to kind of turn the tables a little bit and put the power in your hands, the audience, to guide this session here. So today is an Ask Me Anything. The content will be driven entirely by you out there in the audience, by your questions. So we have scheduled a full hour for this, but whether it takes all of that time or not is entirely up to you. Please use the Q&A tab within Zoom to submit any questions that you have. That's where I will be monitoring for the questions to bring into the conversation. This session is being recorded and it will be distributed out via email if you're in attendance now. And it will also be posted to Salto's YouTube channel afterwards, which is also where you can find all of the other sessions that we have done this year. So if you want to go back and check out the demos we've done throughout the year, definitely go check out Salto's YouTube channel. And let's see, while I see a question flowing in already, so while you guys get your initial questions in, I do want to mention that Salto is not a consulting company looking to sell you any services or anything like that. They are a software company that has built this powerful DevOps platform for business application teams to plan, review, deploy, and monitor changes to those business platforms. So Salto supports systems like NetSuite, Salesforce, Zendesk, Jira, and a bunch of other ones. So to try out the platform for yourself, you can check out salto.io, where you can sign up for a free 30-day trial and a free personalized demo as well. Right. Jeff, anything to add before we dive in?
I think you covered it. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to answer questions about how NetSuite and Salto work together, either for customers who are currently using NetSuite or who are analyzing Salto as a potential tool to use. So yeah, let's get started.
Okay. All right. I see two started now. Two questions already. They look very NetSuite specific as opposed to Salto specific. That's okay. I'll do my best. The first one from Anonymous. How can one close open purchase orders that have receipts registered against them, but on which the balance will not be received? You cannot delete item receipts as related items have been consumed or sold. That's a very NetSuite specific question. Um, and an accounting focused one. How can we close purchase orders, have receipts, but the balance will not be received? That's maybe not, that's out of my wheelhouse. I don't know the right accounting answer to that of how you appropriately track that balance that you're not going to get. So I don't know. I have to punt on the very first question.
Maybe receive it into a what do you call it? It's a side a side account, a suspense account, something like that, maybe.
Yeah,
But
I'm not
this isn't
sure.
ask me anything. It's not necessarily we will give you a good answer on anything.
Yeah, we'll do our best. I am not
Yeah.
an accountant, uh, and so I don't always know the best way to sort of make sure all the books tie out. So I apologize. I can't give a better answer. Um, but I don't like to guess. I don't want to guess at accounting questions and give you
This is not
the
accounting advice.
wrong guidance. Next one. Again, this one is more up my alley, but it is again NetSuite specific from Veda. Mass updates and mass map reduce scripts seem to be capable of replacing each other. Can I provide a good example which explains the need for both? Sure. They do There's some overlap in a mass update and a map reduce in the fact that they both are intended for bulk processing, doing some operation or operations on a large amount of records. But there's a lot of differences. Mass updates are specifically for one single record type. Uh, they cannot be scheduled. They are manually triggered. So when you want to do a very specific custom mass update, an administrator has to go into that UI and explicitly trigger that mass update and run it once. Map reduces are much more general. You get to decide what the inputs are, and you get to write code that pulls in whatever data you need to process, and you can process it however you want. So mass updates, you drive through the mass update UI with one very simple search of one single record type, and it will go through and process each record in the results list. MapReduce, you get to completely decide. You can pull data from multiple record types, from reports, from external systems. You get to pull in data from wherever and process it however you see fit. And you can do that on a schedule. So you can set up whatever schedule you want as fast as every 15 minutes with a MapReduce script. Can't necessarily provide specific examples of those necessarily, but they are both for bulk processing, but MapReduces are much more general and can be run automatically on a schedule. They can be triggered by other scripts. I'm not sure if a MapReduce, or I'm sorry, if a mass update can be triggered by other scripts. I don't think so. I think it is always triggered manually. So I hope that helps, Veda. Right. Another one from Anonymous. Uh-oh. Can you explain NetSuite's logic on costing? I'll read the rest of this, but the short answer is no, I can't. Is it possible to restrict average costing to take costs from items in only one location if your company has several locations in one subsidiary? Is it possible to restrict last purchase price to only consider the price in purchase orders, not considering transfer orders? I do not know. That is well outside of my wheelhouse. I do not know the costing model that NetSuite uses. Once again, I'm not an accountant, nor am I a warehouse manager or anything like that. So I don't have answers to those. Got scripting questions? I can answer those. You've got Salto, DevOps, operational questions. Jeff can answer those and maybe show demonstrations where it's relevant. So I don't have another, sorry, Anonymous. I don't have a good answer for how NetSuite does costing. Right. I'm gonna jump to this one from Josh. Are there any case studies, testimonials, references for SDN partners, Suite Cloud Developer Network partners, using test drive accounts to manage their DevOps teams specifically for Suite app project types? I don't know if there are any case studies or testimonials for anything like that. Jeff, maybe you can talk about, you've got clients, know how much we see Suite app.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on what you mean by kind of having their DevOps team manage this thing. But we have customers who there's two kinds of customers out there, right? There's customers that are just end users of NetSuite, and then we have other kinds of customers who are sort of NetSuite SDN partners who are creating their own functionality to add to their own their customers who are NetSuite users. For the second batch of people, we use Salto for helping companies promote from a dev environment. In the case of one of the partners, it's usually from a dev environment into like a UAT environment, and then from a UAT environment into the pre-customer staging environment from which the Suite app is created. So we'll help customers do that. specifically around around using Suite apps to deploy your own software, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I don't really delve into the my most of my customers are end users of NetSuite. We have a few partners who we help build their Suite apps, but primarily we're kind of focused on end customers.
All right. But I mean, otherwise, there's no, I don't know of any restriction on, using a test drive account versus a sandbox. Those are distinct from sandboxes. Um, I don't know that you can use test drives to distribute Suite apps. I'm not sure. I've been out of the Suite app game for a long time, and it has changed a lot since I last touched it. So, um,
We
what
do develop
you,
a Suite app. So we actually, so as part of Salto, there is a
yeah,
small little
yeah,
Suite app. And we develop it. I think we only have test drive accounts. I don't think we have sandboxes. So
okay.
just as a heads up.
Well, there's a testimonial. You can do it. It is possible. What pains are involved in that? Well, I'm not sure. Um, because it's not tied to any sort of production account necessarily, you can't do any sort of like performance type comparison if you're trying to check how your Suite app is running, how efficiently, how fast they are. You won't get a realistic, production comparison out of a test drive or out of a sandbox for that matter. Um, when you have a true production account for a Suite app team, you can do a much more realistic performance assessment. A lot of things. But otherwise, I don't know of any restriction on a test drive account that wouldn't allow you to build and run your operations out of it. Um, but something to explore with you. If you're already an SDN partner, you have an account rep that you can talk to from NetSuite. They would probably be the best source for that. Let's see. All right, here's another one from Anonymous. When we create fields in NetSuite, we often narrow down the forms where we are applying that field.
Hmm.
By using the Apply to Forms button on the field to restrict which forms that field is exposed on. However, when we move the field with Salto or with Copy to Account, it does not retain those values. Instead, it applies the field to all of the forms related to the transaction type that we've selected on the field. Any ideas on how to move just the field and maintain the selected forms?
It's a great, really interesting question, actually. I'm dealing with this week. We're going to create some specific functionality for this. But I know exactly what you're talking about here. I literally this week I've been working with customers on this. So like you say, it's exactly what happens there. When you deploy a field, the way that NetSuite encodes the field's appearance or not on a form, on any particular form, is a property of the form, not of the field. And so when you deploy the field, it doesn't touch any of the forms. Well, that's not exactly true. It doesn't explicitly touch any of the forms, but as a side effect of creating a field, NetSuite populates all the forms with that field as visible, all the ones that are in the applies to. So that means that like you say, when you use any form of automation to create the field, you don't get that apply to form screen because that's kind of a separate part of the flow. What I've discovered is that if you deploy the field, you can also select the forms. Salto doesn't require you to deploy those forms along with them, but if you look in the applies to in the other references tab when you're doing a Salto deployment, there's an other references tab. I can even bring that up if I get a minute here and we have a break. I'll show you what that looks like. But in the other references tab, all the forms to which that field is applied should show up there. And you can go and select In fact, you can select not the whole form, you can select the individual place where that field is being applied to the form. And when it's being applied to the form, it actually does show you that's showing as not visible. So yes, there is a way to do that. It's not kind of obvious and exposed on the way through the flow, but as you're deploying those fields, just go into the other dependencies tab and you'll see a bunch of forms listed. And within those forms, you can actually dig in underneath. You don't have to select the whole form because that might not want the entire form, but you do want the fields that you're deploying, and you can select just those fields, and it should propagate through as hidden rather than visible.
Great. Yeah. Feel free to pull that up if that's something we can sort of point to in the UI. Feel free to share and pull that
Uh,
up.
I'll do that.
Great.
Give me a moment here. Well,
Hopefully that
I'll just
helps.
share. Oh, do we have another question coming, or should I just go ahead and share that one? We could do a quick. I'll do a quick look on that. How about that?
If you can do it quickly, I've got more questions. Yeah, but
Think
if
I
you
can.
can get it
Think
up and just point to what we're talking about here, so we can get an
I,
idea of what it looks like.
Salto, for all those who haven't seen it, this is what Salto looks like. I have to move this Zoom stuff out of the way, so bear with me for one moment. So I can do a compare and deploy on this. I can choose my my dev environment as my source, and my target environment is production. And I'm going to say, move a field with the form assignments as well. Okay, I hope I have a field to move. I haven't prepped this, so let's see if I can find one that's good. So this is
What happens when
the
we do it
two
live?
environments. Yeah, that's right. These are the differences between the two environments. If I look in here, I can probably find, say, an entity custom field. Yeah, there's some entity custom fields here. I'm looking for one to add. I'm hoping to add one with, well, I probably won't go through with it the whole way, so I'll just do this one here, Sweet World field. All right, this was a field we were adding for Sweet World apparently. So I've got one field selected. Now you're right. If I deploy just this field, it's not going to add or remove it from any of the forms. And as a side effect, after I deploy this form, NetSuite after the fact is going to go in there and mess with the forms to add them to a bunch of forms I don't want it on. But if we come in here, there might be some forms. Here we go, on which that's included. So let me back up there. What I did was I clicked on the other dependencies field, tab here. And that other dependencies tab shows me things that are related to my selection, but not strictly required, right? If there was something that was strictly required, like a list or something like that as part of this field, then that would appear in the missing dependencies tab. In this case, it's another thing that's related. So if I pick that field, I see all the things that are related, like the employee field is somehow related to this thing. It probably depends. Yeah, see, the employee field actually depends on the entity custom field that's in question here. But if it was the other way around, I would need to include that. But since I've selected the field first, it's showing me, if you want to, you could also deploy this thing which is related. Forms are the same way. So in this form now, I can see that there are visibility things and stuff like that, and where this is added. I can choose to include that as well, this entity custom field on there, and only that change. So you could do that. Some of the form configuration will have like is visible versus is not visible, and that's where we can add the field as not visible. In this case, it's like a default field group. It's in the middle position, and here are the fields that are in there. It doesn't look like it has a is there an is visible thing here? Yes. Okay, visible, no, right? Excellent. This is what I want. I want this to not be visible. So when I deploy the field, I can choose to deploy just this portion of the form, which maintains its invisibility on that form. I hope that's helpful.
Seems like exactly the answer to me.
All right.
Yeah, definitely give that a shot. All right. This one from Diego. Was there a way to automatically deploy my suite apps like Oracle does? Can maybe get some clarification on here and what we mean, but I'm going to assume we mean with Salto.
Let's see. Automatically deploy suite apps. Well, so if you want to deploy a suite app, I'm wondering. I'm not sure exactly what the the functionalities required there. Let's see, can I automatically deploy my suite apps like Oracle does? I'm not sure what you mean by my suite apps. You create something for your own application, and you want to deploy it to another environment. You might be able to do that. I think the answer here might be, and sorry, I'm not a sales guy. This might sound like a salesy answer, but there is one way you can use to deploy things from say a test environment to a dev environment or to a production environment, and that is to use Salto's promotions, like I showed a minute ago. So that's one of the main features of Salto is it allows you to capture changes in a dev environment, say, wrap them into almost a bundle, although better than bundles and better than copy to account, and deploy those. So if you're using suite apps to deploy from a lower environment to a higher environment, we can do that for you with Salto, and rather than using suite apps. It's probably a much faster route as well. The suite apps route can be
But
difficult.
if you're building and distributing your own suite apps, I know that because we had this conversation in Slack yesterday, Salto does not support the suite app project type. So you
Right.
can't deploy a suite app SDF project with Salto. It only
That is,
does account customization
yeah,
projects.
exactly. Yeah. The best practice there is if you're deploying something with Salto to deploy all your suite apps first on the target environment so that the target environment looks as close as you can to the source environment from a suite app and a bundle perspective. But kind
Mhm.
of a different question.
Yeah. You could use Salto. I think you kind of mentioned this earlier. You could use Salto to sort of stage the distribution environment where the suite app then gets
Hmm.
built and distributed with Oracle's suite app
Yep.
control
Yep.
center.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you could use
And
Salto earlier in the process.
we have some partnership customers who use Salto in a similar kind of a way, where they connect to, say, a different target environment, maybe a customer A and customer B, and they deploy the same thing to both customer A and to customer B using Salto. So there's a way to use Salto to replace some of the suite app functionality. It's not sort of the same thing, but it is a possibility to do things that way. I think I understand your question, Diego. I think I got
Yeah.
the gist of it at that last bit there. Thank you.
Yeah. Got confirmation. That is what they meant. Okay. Hopefully that helps answer. This one
Mhm.
from Anonymous. What are the differences between SDF and Salto? Are they complementing each other?
Another really great question. So under the covers, Salto uses SDF extensively. We don't use only SDF. We go beyond what SDF does. So, for example, we can manage departments and currencies and I forgot the other ones, but there's some things outside of SDF that can't be managed by SDF, and we that's what our suite app is for. Is it allows us to get API access to some other things like departments. Um, and also the file cabinet, right? SDF gives you access to a certain part of the file cabinet. We can provide access to the entire file cabinet, so things like bundle scripts and those sorts of things. Now, in terms of the differences, if you want to use SDF as a deployment tool, there's a lot of homegrown scaffolding you need to build to make that into a repeatable process. And so one of the purposes of Salto is to make that our problem. We do all the scaffolding you need, and when you want to deploy something, all you do is you select the things you want to deploy and let it go. If you are doing SDF development with VS Code and you have GitHub and some kind of pipelines, we can integrate with all of that, but that's a much more sophisticated use of SDF. If you're just talking about using SDF to deploy something here and there, Salto is a really great replacement for that. So it's either a replacement for simple stuff, and if you have a big complex deployment process with DevOps and all that, we are an augmentation to that and allow you to manage both metadata changes, so administrative changes alongside of coding changes within a single platform. But we don't strictly replace SDF. We augment it. We hide it if you want it hidden, or we integrate with it if you're a sophisticated SDF user.
Right? Thorough answer. All right. This one's the last one I have at the moment. So everyone feel free to add new questions. But from Anonymous again, what are your thoughts around locking down user dashboards fully? more of a NetSuite sort of administration question here. We lock down dashboards and lock it so they can't manually add or remove any portlets or searches, but I can see the benefit to letting users edit their own dashboards after they're provisioned a generic dashboard. Trying to use the best approach. Jeff, I don't know if you'll have any sort of customer insight maybe from this or things you've seen in other spaces, other environments, but for me,
Yeah.
I I don't think you can. I don't think there's a wrong approach here. It kind of depends on what you need the dashboard to accomplish. If you want it to be a hub for quick access to whatever the user needs, then I want the user to be able to configure that, move things around, put the links they want on there, put the reports they want. If it's supposed to be the hub of all the things they use NetSuite for, I personally would let them edit that and let them build their own hub. If it's more, we want this team to be on the same page and looking at all the same metrics and coordinating a sort of team or a department effort, then I want to probably lock that down and keep pretty tight control over that so we know exactly what they're looking at and we're giving them all the right information that's always in the same place so we can very quickly get orientated with that dashboard. That dashboard's not there to be flexible. It's there specifically to be inflexible and show very specific information. So I think both. I think you should be able and willing and able to use both approaches depending on the need of the dashboard and of the users of the dashboard. All right. That's it. That's all I have right now. Do we have any other questions? Could be Salto type questions. Some of the other demonstrations we've done throughout the year, we've shown how Salto can, we might need your help, Jeff, but we've shown sort of the basic deployment flow of Salto, how you can promote changes really easily from sandboxes to production. We've shown how you can monitor those changes using Salto to sort of watch your deployments. We've shown how to clean up. You can use Salto to like identify and stale customizations and things like that, things that aren't in use. You can use to clean up a NetSuite account. We've shown how we can use it to sort of build documentation and onboard new employees and build up a team around it. Yeah, we've shown a whole bunch of stuff that you can do with which on the surface is a deployment tool, right? But when you dig in, it has much more wide application.
Maybe we could do a poll or something, Arik, if you're out there, saying two things. I'm just curious about who in the audience is already Salto users, and maybe if there's enough interest, we could do a quick demo as well. But I don't want to take up time for questions or keep anyone longer than they want to stick around. So maybe if we can get a poll thrown up there to say if people want to see a demo.
Yeah.
Or just put a Q&A in there saying, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. All right. I got a question coming in
Yes.
here.
Okay.
I also see in chat someone is interested in a demo, but
Okay.
here we go. Anonymous again. Thank you, Anonymous. Is Salto a good tool for providing auditors with information for IT audits, or is it better for change control?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so this is a near and dear to my heart. I've talked to a lot of customers about their audit process, and there are many cases where Salto can be very useful in an audit situation. So we keep track of all the things that have been deployed from dev into production. We keep track of all the things that have been hot fixed in production, and we're not actually a part of a dev to prod deployment process. The only caveat I have is that we're not sort of a full audit tool in the sense of like a fast path would be. we don't do any kind of functional compliance testing. So things like, hey, the person who wrote the purchase order can't be the person who signs the check or whatever, right? Um, that's functional segregation of duties requirements that we don't cover, and something like FastPath is a great tool to partner up with Salto. We do a really good job though on the not just the change management, but also the compliance controls on those change management, and to a high degree, the provision of information to the audit team on that. What I found is that we don't always provide the audit team with, audit teams like spreadsheets and screenshots, right? That's what they need. We don't provide the spreadsheets portion of that, and so although we do a lot more than we used to, we have sort of there's an export button on a lot of our lists, so it's not impossible to get those sorts of things. Um, but we can be a very strong partner in building audit controls and providing information. It's just sometimes that information has to be created by the Salto admins rather than having it as automatically created for auditors. Typically, the auditors aren't Salto users, so we provide that information via some kind of administration person.
Great. All right. A few more. Looks like the poll. We do have interest in a demo.
And a question about the demos that I'll include
And a
this. So
question about the demo. Yeah. So from Josh, make sure that in your demo, Jeff, you include
that
rollbacks and
that
versioning, how you see
all right,
what was deployed and how you can
all
see
right,
which version, all that stuff. Deployment
sounds good.
history.
So we kind of saw you guys saw a flash of the demo before, which was the first entering a question. But let me go through the full thing. I think it'll only take 10 minutes. I'll go somewhat quickly here. And if questions do pop up during the demo, fire them in. Like we'll answer them
Yep.
live. And so don't let this stop the Q&A. Even if it's unrelated, we can save them for the end. So,
Yeah. I'll watch
um,
the Q&A while Jeff does his thing.
sounds awesome. All right. So what we're looking at here is the Salto interface, and I'm connected to a couple of NetSuite environments. I'm actually connected to lots. I'm just filtering. So I'm actually connected to piles and piles of different applications. It's NetSuite. It's also Salesforce and Okta and Zendesk. Lots of things that we can connect to. But if we just connect to the Salesforce environments, I've got a couple. I probably should have three. I should have a dev, a UAT, and a prod. All the stuff I'm showing you now extends to a full pipeline of dev or multiple devs plus a UAT or an integration and a prod. So we can have a very long pipeline if you need it. But I'm just going to show you the short one. What we do is we connect to each of these environments in turn on a regular basis, typically daily, and we do a process called a fetch. And a fetch is something that connects to the NetSuite APIs, both SDF, but also, like I said before, broader than just SDF. And we collect all the information about a NetSuite configuration. So things like, let me get some interesting ones. So roles, right? Lots of roles. Lots of saved searches. So we get a report of all the saved searches that are there, all the workflows, all the subtabs, all the suitelets. I mean, everything that you configure in like the setup and configuration menus in NetSuite are here for you to peruse, and it's great because I can go in here, I can look at a role, I can bounce around from one role, I can see how it's configured, right, and I can see its permissions. And get a feel for how this role is set up. And then I can also just pick a different role and say, all right, I'm curious about this role now, and I can do the same thing here and see its permission sets as well. And then I can do things like, hey, I want to actually compare one to another. I want to take this role and compare it to some other instance, some other role in this instance. I can also compare across instances, but before I get there, I can say compare this Celigo support to a employee center role and see what differences there are. It'll show me exactly what's different about them, including the permission differences, et cetera. So it's a nice way of kind of getting a good understanding of what's in your environment. In addition to that, let me see if I can move my Zoom stuff out of the way and come down to one of these roles. I think this is it. Maybe it's 1079. So I can see these roles, and at the very bottom here, if I scroll down, I can see where this role is used. So I can see that this role is used in a bunch of transaction forms. Let me find the one that I'm looking for, and that is one that has roles that's something that's used in beyond a transaction, just transaction forms. I think it might be this one. Nope. Which one is it? I've got one that's used in a workflow. Oh, I know. It's because I'm in prod, not dev. Sorry, let me go to my dev environment. Records. I'm gonna show you this functionality in the other direction. Let me start with the workflow, and I'll work back to the role because I know that's gonna work here. So if I look at workflow, for example, I also see the workflow, all of its configuration, its conditions, its states, its fields, its transitions, everything. And at the bottom of all that, I see all the things that this workflow depends on, right? So I can see that it depends on 5 transaction custom body fields, or a workflow action script, 6 roles, and a custom list. So all those things are used somehow in this workflow. So I can say, all right, which transaction body fields are they? Are there these ones? And when I open them up, I can actually go and click on them and say, all right, what's this workflow selector? I can click on the workflow selector, and it'll bring me to that field. I can see that this field in turn is probably dependent on a list. I bet. Yeah, there it is. There's my list. So this field is this thing is dependent on the list. And I can go and have a look at the list and see what the items on the list are. So I get a really good sense of what depends on what. And then I can also see that elements in this list are used in a couple of workflows. So if I'm making changes to this list, this is Zalary's workflow and this is my workflow. I better go and tell Zalary if I'm going to make changes to the list, because if I'm changing purple to I don't know, ochre or something like that, then that might break her workflow. So I can do some impact analysis by understanding what all of these dependencies are. And I can even go back into my workflow and see exactly where in my workflow that the workflow selector is being used. And it's being used as in this workflow action, in action 1330, it's got this particular use of the value set. So that's called peruse. Any questions about that popping up yet, Eric?
Not specifically about that yet, but I think this dependency list, we spent a lot of time on this in like the getting your bearings in an environment. I think we did a demonstration on that. And this
Yeah.
dependency list is a great example of augmenting SDF, right?
Right.
This sort of dependency information is somewhat available in SDF. You can kind of look at the XML and see what elements are tied to others, but it only does that at one level. I can see that this field touches, or that this workflow references that field, but you wouldn't
Yeah.
also see that it's connected to that list underneath the field. And Salto brings all of that sort of
Yeah.
nested dependency information to the fore, so that if you're coming into this workflow, you've never seen it before, but I need to make a change to this workflow. What are all the downstream effects that changing it might have? You can come in and see that dependency tree right here in
Mm-hmm.
Salto.
Yep. Yep. You got it. Exactly right. Cool. All right. So that's the explore functionality. There's also some other cool stuff like full text search. I won't get into that. But there's lots and lots you can do to discover what's going on in your environment. And oh, and by the way, that was just the records. We also capture custom records too, right? So if you've got some custom records with instances, like it captures this custom reference configuration and all of its fields, but also all of the individual instances of this custom record, if it's appropriate. We have that control to be able to do that or not. So custom records, file cabinets, settings is kind of fun. We can look at the accounting preferences for a company. This is really good for pre-go live to compare this dev accounting preferences to production accounting preferences. So that's super handy as well. Now, if I wanted to do that kind of a comparison, what I can do is I can create a new comparison. Like we saw this a little bit before in the earlier question. I'm going to select my dev environment as my source, and my target environment is prod. I'm going to say I'm going to attach this to a Jira ticket. I think it's 650 is the one I'm working on. And I'm going to deploy the SO workflow. Okay, that's this. It's a sales order workflow. It's a two-level sales order workflow. It looks a little something like this. Workflows. This is my dev environment. So I've got this nice looking workflow in my dev environment, which is right, where is it here? Here it is. And it's pretty simple, right? It's got some fields it uses. It's got some workflow action script it uses. It's depending on some roles, right? I can't really see that here, but I saw that in Salto, right? So that's the first kind of a nice thing you get out of Salto is to like, all right, great. This is an interesting picture of the workflow, but what's the dependency of workflow tree look like? And that's where you can kind of go back and forth between Salto and NetSuite.
It
This
takes a
workflow does
lot of
not.
clicks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go in here and like, all right, look at this thing. And I got to go and figure out each one of these with whether this is a custom field or not. I can't really tell which custom field it is, except I might know its name, etc. Um, Now, this workflow does not exist in my target environment yet. So this is my production environment here. And if I go into workflows, you won't see this workflow. I'm going to pull up that list so that we can see it appear magically in a moment. Come on now, workflows. Magically, it will appear at the top of this list in a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm looking at a comparison between my source, my dev environment, and my prod environment. Uh, I see that there are lots of differences between the two environments, 1,000 things. A bunch of them are additions. So these are things that only exist in source, but not in target. A bunch of modifications. So they exist in both environments. So if I look at, for example, I don't know, a suite script is always a good thing to look at. I can see on a line by line basis what the differences in my suite scripts are, right? So I can see there's some blocks missing in my, I'm going to be deleting these blocks during my deployment. So I can see all kinds of differences. I can see deletions as well. So these are things that exist in my prod environment, but don't exist in my dev environment. So I could spin this around and make them additions, or I could delete things if I wanted to in some cases. Um, but I'm gonna go back to that workflow we were looking at before. It's in records, it's down in workflows, and it's called GWR SO workflow. So I'm going to select it for deployment. Okay, I want this thing to appear magically in my target environment. So great, I'm going to deploy that. But remember that there were these dependencies that I've got to remember, like I have to take care of. Some of them are already satisfied, by the way, right? You'll notice here that the roles don't appear here, and that's because they're already identical between the two environments. So I don't have to worry about them. I'm only seeing differences here. So there's these 5 transaction body fields. They need to be added to my target environment as well. So I'm going to grab those. There's a workflow action script that also has to be added. So I'm going to grab that one. And this workflow action script depends on the underlying file cabinet element. So when I select this, it'll go away, but the file cabinet element will show up. And so I'm going to select that file cabinet element as well. It's an addition. All now I can see that all my dependencies are satisfied, right? So I've gone through the process of figuring out what's dependent on what, and Salto did that for me. Contrast that with SDF, and you'll be in a lot more of a kind of a challenging situation to make that all happen in SDF.
Yeah. It does it. It just does it one step at a time. It's like you'd have to make the first change and validate that, and it would tell you, oh, there's a missing dependency. So you would fix that and validate again, and then it would tell you, oh, there's another missing dependency now.
Yeah.
It's a much, it's a much more streamlined in Salto. SDF does it. It's just that it's a much longer process.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, and by the way, I can do things like deploy an account too, or I can deploy account changes too. So that this is beyond STF. So I could just add in this. There's the difference in my inventory account for whatever that is, custom record account special from Node.js. So I could select that change as well to include in my deployment. I probably won't because there might be a constraint on that. Maybe I could add an account just for fun. Do I have like a GWR account I can add? Probably not. Oh, I know. Here we go. This is mine. I know this is mine because I live in British Columbia, so this is definitely mine. Oh, and it's telling me there's a subsidiary that uses that thing, but it's not a hard dependency. So I'm going to try and deploy that just for fun. So bear with me on that. If it doesn't work, forgive me. I haven't tested this out. But you can select things beyond just SDF capable stuff. So things like accounts and departments and things like that, subsidiaries.
And you don't have to select all 1,000 changes. You can selectively deploy very specific elements.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see now that I am only selecting this very small number of things, right? All right. Cool. So now I'm going to preview this deployment. Preview deployment is something that Salto does to validate the request that's being made. And it's going to ensure that what we're asking NetSuite to do is likely to succeed. We've dealt with the SDF and other APIs a lot, and so we've managed to find all the weird little corner cases. Maybe not all of them. That might be overstating, but we found a lot of little corner cases that trip us up. And so we validate against those before we move forward, and just to make sure that things are likely to succeed. Once we're through all those validations, the other thing we could do is create a little approval process, so we can actually block this behind an approval. I may have done that. We'll see if this is blocked or not. Come on now, hurry up, Knuckles. So behind the scene, I don't know if you remember our mascot. His name is Knuckles. Let's see if I go to explore. Yeah, this guy here is named Knuckles, named after our file format. The .nacl file format is the underlying text file format. It's called NACL, which we pronounce Knuckle. So we named this guy Knuckles. So whenever things are slow, I'm always asking Knuckles to hurry up. I think we're done. Oh, maybe not. Come on, Knuckles. Don't make it hard for me. Law of
While
demos.
it's going, we'll be putting up a closing poll here, so look out for that here in the audience.
Okay, not so bad. All right, so here are the 9 things that I want to deploy. Everything looks good. None of the validators were triggered, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the deploy button, and we're going to go through the deployment. So now I'm actually reaching out to NetSuite to do these changes, and it's going to deploy all 9 of those in order, right? So we're going to put down the script first in the file cabinet, then we're going to create the script record, then we're going to create the transaction body fields, and once all that's in place, then we can go ahead and create the workflow. So we're doing all that work kind of in the right order to make sure that the dependencies are in place before we try and do anything. Any questions coming up in the chat?
There are. I was going to wait, but from Josh, so you can deploy NetSuite native record type instances, thus avoiding CSV imports.
For custom records, yes. For certain kinds of item information, yes. For employees, yes. For accounts, not necessarily everything. And sometimes it's a scale issue. Like sometimes you just have to import things because there's a million of them, right? So some if you have lots of products in your product item list or something like that. But yes, we can do some of that work. One thing we can't handle easily, and I just found that out this week, is if those custom records, for example, refer to account specific values. So say example, and I'm an employee. Those are account specific. So the IDs are different for across environments. So those are at the moment challenging for us, but we're constantly working to improve that coverage. And so things that we don't cover yet are likely to be improved in the future.
Yeah, I would definitely not consider Salto a data import tool. That's not really what it's for. You're not going to be importing a bunch of transactions or things like that. It is for configuration
Absolutely
management,
true. Yeah, that's right.
deploying those
There are
configuration
cases.
changes.
Yeah, exactly. It's mostly configuration. So some custom records are data, and some custom records are kind of configuration. You can think of them that way. For those that you can think of as configuration records, yeah, we could probably do that. But there are others that's it's not as easy, and definitely not transactions. You may have some background noise. I apologize for that. Family's home. It's all good. Big audience family, so keep the language to a minimum here. Anyway, so what we've done now, we've finished that deployment. I can now refresh this screen, and what we're going to see if I refresh is the workflow show up here at the top. And here I have my new workflow in my production environment, produced exactly as it was in my source environment with all of the same kinds of things. And now I can do my UAT, or I can run it in production, whatever the case may be. So that's the kind of the overall Salto demo. From an audit perspective, there are some audit questions. We have this history of all the deployments that have ever been done. So I can scroll back and look back to a long time ago. I think there's a little missing thing here that oh, wait a minute, I'm in drafts. Hang on. It should give me the full list back in time. Yeah, here we go. Good. Back in time to 2022. I probably did the same workflow deployment back in 2022. I should probably refresh my demo a little bit. Oh, it didn't. I just skipped something. Like I tried to deploy workflow and it skipped it, so I could see successful deployments as well as deployments that didn't work as successfully. Let's look at one that was a little more recent. Let's look at how about I'm just trying to look for something that's not my workflow here. Okay, now the hard ones. What's this one? Right. So JavaScript, right? So I deployed some JavaScript in this case, and it deployed those fine. So anyway, from an audit perspective, we do have a list of everything that was ever deployed here, and we can get those in a CSV file if we like. The CSV file isn't complete from the internals perspective, so we don't. The CSV file will show me this list, but it won't show me exactly what was deployed in this list. For that, we've got other things, like we can link this all to a Git repo, and you can see it. This is already pushed to a Git repo, and I can use all the power of GitHub now to find out, for some file, when was it last updated, for example. So we do keep track of all of this in a Git repo too, just if you need to.
Well, yeah.
There's lots more, but it's 10:52 in my time, or 12:52 my time. So I'm going to stop there, and we can go back to any Q&A or just some follow-up.
I think that was great. You can see there we keep track of the history and what was contained in each deployment. So you could name, if you do intense versioning or something like that, you use semantic versioning. You could name your deployments with whatever your versioning scheme is, and Salto will keep track of all that. Any of those, we didn't really show this, but in that list, you can roll back to any of those, any prior deployment. You can roll back to that.
Or I should have shown
state.
that. Let me show you
Yeah.
that too, real quick. I'll just show you what that looks like. A rollback for us is kind of a restore. You can think of it, each time we fetch the environment, it creates a snapshot of the environment. So I can restore from that snapshot. Now, everyone's like, "Oh my God, you can't restore." We don't restore everything. We just give you the comparison between October 20th and today. And that allows me to very selectively pick and choose the things that I want to deploy. So just like I'm comparing a dev environment to a prod environment, this is going to compare prod on October 20th to prod today, and allow me to do that same selection on whatever has changed since then. So not much has changed. So now there's only 12 differences between then and now. So I can look at, all right, this save search change. How did the save search change? So I can use this for audit purposes, or I can use it to, like, how come it worked last week and not this week? Or I can use it to actually restore that save search to today, to October 20th's status. So thanks for that reminder. Sorry, I neglected to show restore.
All right, just a few minutes left, so I will we have two more questions from Anonymous, and then we'll wrap up. First, I think you mentioned this really quickly, but we didn't show it. Can Salto compare roles or permissions across environments?
Yes, I did not show that. And yes, indeed, you can. Any of the things we compared, I happened to compare workflows, but the roles were in there. If I wanted to show the differences between roles, you can definitely see on a permission by permission basis what exactly differs between the dev and a prod environment, for example.
Right. And another from Anonymous. Is there a way to build boundaries between projects in Salto? So, for example, each boundary only includes changes related to a specific project, so that you don't have to cherry pick which components to deploy. You're muted.
Sorry. So one of the ways to do that is to do what we call a change-based deployment, and we look, and that's a point in time selection. So it's not exactly change-based. We can really do it when we incorporate SDF into the backend process. So in that case, your project is in SDF, and you can create a deployment from an SDF project. Segregating on a project by project basis is the coarse-grained way to do that would be to create, these deployments that I've got. There's any number of deployments, right? So I can have a deployment for this. This could be one called Project A and one called Project B. So this is Project A, okay, Project A, whatever. And I could create another one now for Project B. And then I can have the people who are working on those can be adding stuff to Project A and adding to Project B, and those maintain to be separate things. I think part of your question though is, like, how does the source of the what does the source look like? And you're getting the same kind of source level Project B, same source comparison, right? So it's just comparing dev to production. But in the Project B deployment, I can select suite scripts. These suite scripts. Say I can grab these four suite scripts. Oops, sorry. Come on now. Sweet scripts. Here we go. So say I want that one and this one as well. That's for project B. Now, if I go back to my compare and deploy, all these two things exist and they are separated. So now I can go into project A and do some selections in project A, which are quite different. Maybe I'm more interested in custom records in project A, and I grab those custom records. So these things now are very different projects, and they can be added to bit by bit as you go. So it's kind of the separation you were talking about. The only caveat being that they're based on the same comparison.
Right.
Hope that helps. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah. And that brings us to our time. We're out of questions as well. Jeff, thank you for subjecting yourself to this.
My pleasure. I love doing this kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
if you do want more information on Salto, hit us up, and I would love to provide further demos and deep dives. And Eric, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
of course. Thank you all in the audience for driving our content today, for asking questions. Hopefully, we've helped answer and give you some guidance and clarity. And like we said at the top, if you want to check out Salto for yourself, you can head over to salto.io and you can sign up for a free 30-day trial and also get a free personalized demo, maybe even with Jeff. I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a link in the chat. And thank you everyone for joining us. And I guess we'll see you next time.
Thank you. See ya.